So I am Suzanne Orchard. Welcome to this mini series on community shares, how we can own and grow together. I work for Stir to Action and the Centre for Democratic Business, which is part of Stir to Action. We are quite a small cooperative ourselves. We call ourselves a national infrastructure body because we work pan UK with partners in national and local government, industry bodies, third sector, membership associations, funders, anybody really at that strategic level who's interested in working with us to advance democracy in our workplaces and our communities. And we do that through the things like this, the design and the delivery of training and workshops, design and delivery of various economic development programs. We're involved in lots of pieces of research and policy, influencing as well where possible, and we provide business infrastructure support. So we're a busy little team spread right across the UK. I previously, for many years, worked at Scottish Enterprise and laterally at Cooperative Development Scotland, based in Glasgow and Edinburgh for a long time, between Glasgow and Edinburgh. So I do, yeah, it's lovely to be presenting to a Scottish audience today, and I do understand the Scottish landscape pretty well from that relatively long chapter, um, working with those organisations. So thank you so much for having me. Been really looking forward to it. Warm welcome to you all to what is going to be quite a quick, bite-sized, but hopefully valuable community shares series. The aims of the sessions are to increase your understanding of what community shares are and how they're used, give you some practical examples, increase your knowledge and understanding of the legal structures and the governance structures that underpin and enable community shares to actually happen, and to support you to be able to identify other alternative finance options. Because whilst community shares can be used in isolation to raise finance, and they're often, like many other projects, needed alongside a blended finance approach. So the final session is around looking how community shares fit in alongside other financing options. And I think the last aim really is to inspire everybody and increase everybody's confidence, to be able to either take forward an idea or a project using community shares, or perhaps if you're from an advisory background, give you a bit of confidence, to be able to introduce community shares to an existing project. And by no stretch of the imagination are we expecting people to leave and start putting all of that in place themselves. Absolutely not. We're really lucky in Scotland that there's a really supportive landscape for this stuff. A lot of free support out there from my past employer, Cooperative Development Scotland, people at Democratic Finance Scotland, which I'm sure you've come across previously, Community Share Scotland, obviously Plunkett Foundation, another national organisation who are big on providing support, free support packages in this space. So we're really lucky that you don't have to be experts on this, but hopefully these sessions will just whet your palate, give you enough to to decide whether or not this stuff is compatible for the projects that you're working on, and B, if you're advising on projects, give you the confidence to be able to put this stuff forward as another option and another tool on the table. So like I said, there's 3 sessions. Today's the first session. We advise that you come to all of them if you possibly can. They're not really standalone sessions, they're all interlinked. So please do. They're all across our lunch breaks this week. The next one will be on Thursday. That will be the governance and legal structures session, 12 till 1. And then the final session on the other finance options and how community shares fits in is on Friday, again, 12 till 1. Because these are pretty short sessions, we are offering some one-to-ones to do follow-ups with anybody really who wants to have a deeper conversation, a deeper discussion, potentially about a live project or a possibility that you've got, in the mix just now, or maybe explore some of the stuff in the slides in more detail. They are open for you to book on week commencing the 24th of March. The link to book those you should have received in your confirmation email, but I will do a follow-up after today, so you can get access to that calendar again and book if you've not done so already. So what we'll cover today. So as I said, we're going to have a quick look at what community shares are, how they're used. try and give you a little bit of a flavour of sort of the technical descriptions and definition of community share versus the sort of the softer stuff. We're going to cover off why they matter, why they're different, what difference do they make in our communities if we raise capital and finance in this way. Like I said, we're going to cover off some case studies, giving you some inspiring examples of where community shares have really made a difference. But interestingly, we're going to cover different examples of where community shares have been used to achieve different things. So quite often community shares are sort of put into that category of it's to save a local asset, which they're brilliant at, and there's plenty examples of that. But interestingly, community shares are used in quite a few other circumstances as well. So we'll try and pull some of that out with the case studies. We're going to do a quick whistle stop tour on some of the key learnings that have come from those communities, from those case studies, to try and share some of the difficult learning that they learnt in an attempt to save some time and difficult experiences for some people on the call today. And then we're going to hopefully have time for a bit of a discussion, some questions before we wrap up at 1 o'clock and everybody can go and have some lunch. So I thought we'd kick off with a nice quote, big on setting the scene with quotes from actual people. And I thought where better than Dumfries and Galloway's own Portpatrick Harbour. So forgive me if you know all about this already, but I really enjoyed working with these guys in my time at CDS and working along colleagues at Community Share Scotland. And this is a quote from Callum Curry, the chairperson at the harbour, and he said, "Without community shares, we would have been dead in the water. The financial benefits of the community share offer allowed us to find a future when there were no other avenues open to us." And I think this is quite typical, in my experience anyway, of working in this space of people who are looking to raise finance for a particular community orientated project, and they're coming up against the same problems with more traditional forms of financing. So either they're just not traditional financing just isn't an option to them. They're not being entertained by those types of lenders. B, they are, and it's just completely unaffordable. It's too expensive, and it just ends the project in its tracks without any other conversation. And then number three, I think often if projects, community orientated projects, have gone down those more traditional routes of finance, they've found themselves being driven by the wrong ethos, the wrong drivers, the wrong incentives. So being driven basically to, raise enough profit to pay back interest on the loan to the people who, let's face it, don't really have an invested interest in what they're trying to do, whether it be geographically or community of interest orientated. So just the wrong drivers being pushed for the wrong reasons. So Portpatrick Harbour is a really brilliant example. I'll tell you a little bit about it. Again, forgive me if you know, but it's just such a lovely story. So in autumn 2015, the harbour set up a community benefit society, a term you're going to hear quite a lot through the sessions this week, and they launched a really successful community share offer. Their whole aim was to try and secure the ownership and the future, and I suppose the integrity of the historic harbour in the village there, and secure it for community benefit for years to come. So I think that's another key theme in what we're going to discuss today. This is all about looking forward, securing services, assets for the benefit of a community, not just for the here and now, but for many generations and years to come. So this is a long and patient journey that often starts with community shares. So this particular share offer at the harbour provided everybody really who loved the village, who lived there and in the surrounding areas, the opportunity to purchase community shares in the harbour, therefore securing its future, like I said, for many years to come. It was really successful because it completely exceeded expectations. The share offer saw massive interest and it reached its target of £100,000 really quickly. so in just under 3 weeks of opening, giving the organisation, the newly formed Community Benefit Society, an immediate and active membership of around 500 members. So that's immediately 500 people who are backing and supporting, and able to bring lots of other skills and resource to the table, for what it is you want to achieve. Just to give you some figures, the minimum investment there was set at £25, and the maximum was sorry, not 100, £10,000 per person. Okay, so really quickly up front in these types of things, I like to hear some other voices so I don't just have to listen to my own droning on. So I'm hoping we can just do a really brief whip round, and keeping it quite brief because time is precious today. Introducing yourselves with your name, your organization, or who it is you're representing today, or if you're just independent, that's absolutely fine as well, and just one line on why you're interested in community shares. I'll start by nominating somebody, and if you can nominate on from there, it would be great to hear some other voices. So I will start by nominating, who's first on my screen? Dennis at ACT e-bikes. Could you kick us off?
Hi. So I work for ACT, Auchencairn Climate Transition. So we're sort of a local organisation. Up until recently, we've just been a sort of constituted association, and we've just formed as a charity, a SCIO. So our new name now is Auchencairn Climate Transition SCIO. And so I've got ACT e-bikes up there because I was initially hired to coordinate our e-bike project. That's kind of grown a bit now, and it's a bit more of a community transport project, including e-bikes, bikes, minibus trips, and a car sharing platform. I'm just interested in community shares just to find out other funding models. I don't know much about it.
Yeah,
but I'd love to hear about it.
Thank you. Could you pass on to somebody?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, passing on to Tara.
Hi. Yeah, so my name's Tara. I do some volunteering with Let It Grow Stranraer, and we are looking into various projects in Stranraer for the community and community resources. But also, I'm generally interested because I want to find more work in this kind of arena, which is for the well-being of communities and improving life in the environment and for people. And I'm just trying to get as much research as I can into different funding, also different funding models like Dennis, and just learn as much as possible. I have ideas. I actually live not far away from Stranraer, but I live outside of Stranraer, and I have ideas for initiatives and projects in my head. So I'd like to. I'm also trying to find out more about how I can put those into action.
Mm-hmm. So that's great, Tara. Thank you.
Thanks. And I nominate Third Sector D&G Carol Brotherston.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank
you. Yes, I work for Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway, and we asked Start to Action to come and do this today. So I'm here really, same as you actually, gathering more information about community shares. I know a little bit. I've been on a few training courses recently. I think it's going to be quite a big thing in the future, community shares, with all the economic climate that we're currently in. So I think if we can collect as much information as possible, it puts us in a good place to help the organisations that we serve. So that's me, really. Thank you. I'll pass on to Alana.
Hi, so I work for Creation Mill in Langham. It's a CIC, and we're looking to regenerate the textile industry in Langham by using a textile circular ethos. So everything is reused, recycled, We're interested in community shares. It's a route that one day we might have to go down. So we just want to learn as much about it as possible so we know if it's viable for us and if it would work. And I nominate Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane Laws. I am a community advisor in SOSI, South of Scotland Enterprise. Just joined SOSI back in November. So I'm trying to gather my knowledge, but also I work with a range of clients, and I think a bit like a bit like Carol, I think community shares will start to become a bigger option for organisations as grant funding goes down and prices go up and all the rest of it. So I've already got possibly one client in mind that I may be suggesting this to, or signposting to the organisations that can help. So it's just increasing my knowledge really, so I can pass that on. And I don't know if there's anybody else to nominate.
Just put your hand up if you've not.
Selena.
Hi, thanks, Diane. Yep, my name's Selena McMorran. I'm with Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway as well. So I'm the lead for economic development and enterprise. And I'm working with Suzanne just to get this series of events for the sector to happen along with Carol. So hopefully you'll enjoy it and be able to attend the other events as well, because I think they'll be really beneficial if you can get to everybody, all of them. So who else? Jackie, has Jackie been? Not quite sure.
Thanks, Selena. So I'm also with Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway, and I'm new to my role. I'm the locality development officer for the east of the region, and I'd like to find out more about community shares so I can share that knowledge with people when I'm out and about visiting them, to give them another option.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's always good to hear some of the voices and hear where people are, how people are arriving at this topic today. So again, just keeping things interactive. Just going to do a quick baseline survey, and it's just to show of hands. It's just to help me make some notes around how you've engaged with the subject matter to date. So if I could get a quick show of hands from everybody that is or has been a customer of a business owned or funded through community shares. If indeed you know, a lot of people don't even know they have bought something or a regular customer from something that's community owned and ran. So just give me a show of hands if you currently are. Okay, thank you. Just one of us. And same again, show of hands if you're an employee or a member of a business that has raised or is considering raising community shares. Lovely, thank you. Same again, anyone invested in a community share offer already to date? No, no. And then lastly, who is in a role where they support or can influence the development of community-owned business? Quite a few of us in that role. Interesting. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Nice mix of people on the call then, coming at this from different perspectives. So hopefully there's something for everybody here today in terms of the examples and the way we present things. Okay, so what are community shares? I feel like I've been asked this a million times in 15 years in economic development in Scotland, and I feel like I've gone down so many rabbit holes whilst I'm trying to explain it to people. So where I've landed in terms of the simplest way to present this to somebody who's asked is it's basically a way for people to invest in things that matter to them. So not only is it a powerful way to raise finance, which is a really important part of business, bringing business to fruition, keeping business afloat, expanding business, but it's also a really powerful way to engage a community, whether that be geographical or a community of interest, around that business idea by giving them, in return for their investment, some control, some agency, and a say about how things are done. So it's not about driving profits, as I mentioned earlier, for external investors. The piece about community shares that I've grown really, really into and supportive of, and for those of you that are in the in the community wealth building space, is that it's a true and original form of community wealth building. The process of community shares and getting that community engaged in it is strengthening. It builds engagement, it builds consensus. In return, it builds resilience, people resilience, business and economic resilience, and it encourages local accountability whilst building trust in that area. A lot of that stuff is often overlooked in favour of, is this a way that I can raise finance, which I'm not putting as secondary at all. Really important, really important step of a business's journey. But that softer stuff is actually, for me, the crux of the share journey. It's the good stuff. It's the stuff that lasts a lifetime. It's the stuff that addresses many of the I think social and community engagement issues that we're all facing at the moment in our lives. So I often try and really push that side of things, because it is a longer journey. It's not just about going to a bank or a grant lender, a lender or a funder, filling an application, getting your money, and ploughing that into what you've said you're going to spend it on, and getting that thing up and running. It's something that you have to take your community on the journey with you. And the benefits of that, in my experience in this space, make for more resilient, more sustainable businesses, projects, organizations, and local communities. So that's the stuff I really like to pull out up front. This isn't just about financing, it's a real journey you're going to be taking people on. To go to the more technical description of it, I took this off Cooperatives UK's website. They're all slightly different variations of what community shares are, but this touches on quite a few key points. Community shares are non-transferable, withdrawable shares in a cooperative or a community benefit society. Two terms you're going to hear quite a lot of through the course of this series. They are voluntary or statutory asset lock, and they are owned and democratically controlled by the community they serve. There's quite a lot packed into that definition, so I'm going to break it down. Non-transferable, pretty much what it says on the tin, can't be transferred, and that is to protect the interests of the organisation or the other shareholders, so your share can't be transferred externally. It's withdrawable because the investor can take their money out of the organisation if they choose to. However, unlike conventional shares, the holder of the community share can't transfer them to another person. So that's transferable, non-transferable, and withdrawable. They are either a cooperative society or a community benefit society. They are the two legal structures that can issue community shares, and we'll come on to that in governance and financing. The asset lock that was mentioned in the descriptor there, probably many of you know what an asset lock is, but it's to prevent the assets that's often involved in a community share issue from being used for private gain rather than the stated purpose of the organisation. So it can't be carpet bagged, sold off, and money profit distributed amongst the members. It remains locked into that community's ambition or purpose for the organisation in perpetuity. And democratically controlled was the last point in that descriptor, really important. So the shareholder has just one vote. So that is regardless of the amount you've invested and the number of shares you hold, which is a brilliant way for ensuring that control isn't centralized, across the few wealthiest investors. It's spread broadly and widely across the community that have invested in it. So everybody has one vote, no matter how much they've invested or how many shares they've bought. Okay, so just to cover that off quickly in 4 bullet points: a method for communities to raise funds, provides people with a stake in projects that they care about, usually owned to finance community-owned enterprises, usually geographically, but can be communities of interest. And to touch on my softer points up front, although for me they are the crucial ones, plays a key role in encouraging local engagement and long-term resilient sustainability of those regions that use it. I'm just going to delve a little bit deeper into withdrawable shares, because in my experience of doing this, I find that this generates a few questions. So just to cover this off in a little bit more detail. So withdrawable shares are absolutely unique to cooperative and community benefit societies, those two legal structures that I'm going to keep mentioning. Community members buy shares in the organisation of the enterprise in return for something that they're interested in, or something that's going to meet their needs. Okay, and in return for that, they get to control that organisation. They get a say. It's governed by the community it serves. And unlike traditional shares in a company, they can't be sold or transferred to others except back into the society. They can be withdrawn, so cashed in by the shareholder, subject to the society's rules and financial position, so as long as the society can afford to do that. They typically don't increase in value, but they may offer interest. Many of those that I've worked with across Scotland do offer a small rate of interest as a return to investors, and that level of interest is set by the society. And they absolutely do give members democratic control. As I said, it's usually one member, one vote, regardless of investment size. And again, just to put some figures and numbers around that, individual investments can start from £10. They're capped at £100,000, and we see the average community share value investment sitting at £395. So why do they matter? What difference do they make? And I think this is the good bit, really. So some of this I've already touched on, but just to centralize it here, they strengthen local economies. So community shares help keep wealth within the area, and this is why I mentioned community wealth building. Keeping local wealth within a local area is the crux of community wealth building. And they do that by supporting businesses that serve the community, again, rather than external investors. Democratic ownership is why they matter. So unlike traditional shares, community shares operate one member, one vote basis, meaning power, as I said, isn't concentrated in the hands of the few. It's spread across that community that cares about that service, that asset, that offer that it's bringing to its local community. They ensure long-term sustainability by far, proven research, many different types of research. They are extremely resilient. And since the shares are withdrawable, not tradable, investors are committing for the long term. So this isn't a quick win. This isn't a quick, I'll invest in that to get a nice, healthy return in 12 months' time. This is patient investment in something that you care about, that you want to see thrive, and that investment builds more resilience in that local area and its businesses. It does unlock alternative finance, other options, but I've phrased that wrongly, sorry. So community shares allows businesses to raise funds without relying on grants, basically. Somebody here on the call today mentioned, I think it was the lady down in Sosay, that grants are getting harder to come by, funders are less willing to fund. The more that you can demonstrate that you're self-sustaining, the better, and the more attractive you'll be to match funding. So they're a way to ensure your vision comes to life without relying on grants and traditional loans, but also makes you more attractive to match funding, I've found as well. So anybody that can demonstrate that you can raise funding, that there is an interest here in what it is you're trying to do, because of the investor members that you've engaged around this project, become more attractive to other funders putting their hands in their pockets and saying, yeah, okay, there's obviously a need for this. I'll match funding with X amount. And you'll see some of that come through the case studies as well. And then lastly, they matter because, like I said, they really empower people. It's empowering to have a share in something within your local community, to have some agency. People become active participants rather than just passive consumers and takers. And that ensures that businesses are able, because they're being owned and governed by the users, it ensures that businesses are really able to meet community needs, and not just assume what the community need. The users are the community, so the service is always going to be aligned with what they want and feel that they need. Anything else I just wanted to say on that? I think some of the other sort of broader influences, I suppose, benefits of community shares are pride. People feel that, and this always gets, put down to the soft stuff. But again, if you can make people feel a sense of ownership and pride in place, in services, in assets, that's a really concrete thing for building place across our economy and our country. A way to preserve local services. So these aren't always nice to haves. These can be essential needs. I've seen community shares save community spaces, schools in Scotland. If you can call pubs essential, pubs, they often are in remote communities, aren't they? It's not just a pub. Shops, post offices. So yeah, a way to preserve and take control of essential local assets and services that your community really, really depends on. They matter because they support local and social inclusion. So they really encourage a diverse participation right across all areas of your community's population. And I think importantly, to go to some of the harder sort of economic measures and aims, they create jobs. They do. They create jobs. They create volunteering opportunities. They create opportunities for people to get work experience. It really strengthens local employment. Case study time. So I said up front that I was going to try and present some case studies coming from different people who have used community shares in different circumstances. So the first one, the Old Forge pub, a nice Scottish example. The UK's most remote pub was the Strapline. This is an example of using shares to save an existing business that was under threat. These can be things, as I said, shop, pub, school, post office, music venues, transport links and connections to remoter parts of the country and our islands. So yeah, using shares to save something that's already in place that's at risk of being lost. So the Old Forge is in Knoydart. I don't know if anybody's been. I went many years ago with my then fiance. Told me this is a great place to have a holiday, and we ended up on the longest hike I've ever been on in my life to get to this pub. It is only accessible by boat or very, very long hike. And it was under threat when its private owner decided to sell. So the community, you can imagine, went into a little bit of turmoil. Got some really brilliant advice from then Community Shares Scotland and CDS, who worked together to support them through this journey, which was ultimately a community-led buyout. So the community formed Community Benefit Society, again buzzword there, and launched a community share offer that raised about £320,000 to purchase the pub. So it was a really brilliant example of a share issue because it just received really, really strong local and global support. Investors from Knoydart and the surrounding areas invested, but it had really an international appeal as well. Lots of people who have holidayed in the Highlands and in that area, people who had family in the area, descendants from that area of the Highlands, all contributed to the share offer. And I think that demonstrates, in some cases, the power of community shares in mobilizing widespread backing. It doesn't always just have to be that specific local community that is investing. It's a sustainable business model, and I think one of the reasons why it had such appeal is because the pub isn't just a pub, like it often isn't in these remote rural places. It's about tourism, it's about local employment, it's about bringing community together. And interestingly, with this one, they really want to build in the clause that they would reinvest profits into that local community, so ensuring the long-term success and the viability of smaller local community projects as a result of the success of the Old Forge. So really quite a circular business model, creating a little miniature circular economy in that area. I'll mention long-term resilience because you can't talk about community shares without doing so. So now that the pub's owned and run by that community, again, like Portpatrick Harbour, it's secure. That is secure, ultimate security and safety for them for generations to come. There's not going to be that risk of some external investor who knows nothing about Knoydart and its region coming in, buying it, running it in a way they don't want it, or turning it into a holiday home or flats or something that the community just don't want. So it enables security. The next, not next example. Last minute I added in some testimonials because I thought it's really nice to see things from the other side of the coin. So not just me telling you, and I can speak to the experience of the group that I worked with, but often it's nice to hear who invests in community shares. What do they think about it? So there's just a few testimonials there from people who actually put their hand in the pocket and invested in the Old Forge community share offer. So things like, it's more than just a pub, it's the heart of our village, keeping it alive for future generations. Community ownership is the future. We've heard that today on the call already. The success of the Old Forge proves that when people come together, they can achieve something incredible. And a thriving Old Forge means a thriving local economy. So having a community-owned pub supports jobs, tourism, and businesses in the area. The next case study is south of the border, down in Lancashire. And again, for context and just to understand the situation that they were in and why community shares, it wasn't about saving something existing. It was about providing something new to a community, something that they felt the community lacked. And this can be, in this instance, it was, a skate park, but I've seen a variety of different types of sports facilities come to fruition in this way, or I've seen a couple of new sort of arts venues as well. So something kind of more thematic that a community is in need of. So this is Projects MCR, and it's a skate park down in Manchester, located under the Mancunian Way flyover. And it started life, although not as a community benefit society and not using community shares, but it started life in 2004 with the aim of transforming a disused area into a vibrant, purposeful, valuable community space for skateboarders. And it's evolved since then. It's had various different guises and growth spurts, but fast forward to 2018, where the skate park was currently operating on council-owned land. They started the process of engaging in a community asset transfer. So this is in 2018, and they set up a charitable community benefit society in order to do that, and secured a long-term lease and asset transfer, giving them full control over that site. So the community share offer actually came to fruition because it was quite a long journey in terms of the asset transfer, like everything is with working with the council. So the community share offer, eventually came to fruition in 2021, and they successfully raised £134,000 from 350 investors, again demonstrating that strong public support for what it was that they're trying to do. This piece of work has always been about youth, young people, inclusive spaces, safe spaces for people from diverse backgrounds. So that was their ethos and their aim, and they now proudly welcome over 1,000 skaters per week to that safe space. So I'm going to mention financial stability because I think it's important for anybody who's setting up a project or a business to take into consideration how they can and potentially will generate their own income rather than just being grant or charity dependent. And unlike many community projects that are reliant on grants, Projects MCR generates income through quite a few different streams. So they are a membership organisation. So they charge for the membership, they provide lessons, they do events and parties, and they also have an on-site cafe, which ensures this long-term financial viability of the project, and something that's not just going to go under when our grants dry up or our economic climate changes. I'll mention long-term community impact as well, because the project has really significantly boosted social inclusion, mental well-being, crucial skill development in the area, and I think it's a key model really for how successful asset transfers, which can be long and tumultuous journeys, can really be successful and create lasting community benefit. And I suppose in layman's terms, worth the effort, worth the journey. So by becoming a CBS, they've obviously ensured that the organisation remains community owned and operated, with profits, again, like the last example, reinvested back into their social mission, which makes skateboarding accessible, inclusive to people from all backgrounds. I'll touch on the charitable status in the governance session later in the week, but they are part of a growing and an increasing number of community projects that are choosing to be both charitable and community benefit societies, but I won't get lost in that rabbit hole just now, but I just wanted to highlight that it is possible. A few testimonials there, again, from people who invested in that share offer. Skateboarding changed my life, gives me an opportunity to belong and grow at Projects MCR. It's more than just a skate park, it's a community hub, brings people together. And I love that this project isn't relying on grants, it's a business with a purpose. Last example I'm going to cover today, before we cover off some of the learning and open up for a discussion, is Scotland the Bread. So we'll come back across the border up into Scotland. And in terms of the circumstances and reasons for share offer for this one, it wasn't to save an existing asset. Could be argued that it's to bring something new to the table, but it's not geographically focused in the way that Projects MCR, Portpatrick Harbour and the Old Forge are. This is what we call a community of interest. So I want to demonstrate that shares can be used to raise capital for a project that isn't necessarily locked into place or geography. It can be a community across the country that wants to unite around a topic and bring a product or a service to the table by funding it through community shares. So they can be used in that way. And I've seen outside of Scotland the Bread, which I'll go on to talk about, I've seen this used where people have come together across Scotland to export goods, Scottish, goods that have a Scottish provenance, people that want to sell fair trade goods, people that wanted to come together to publish a magazine. So those sort of more thematic areas that unite people around it from all over the country. So Scotland the Bread, this began back in 2012. Again, so a lot of these things have a longer life span before they get to the point of raising community shares. It was a subset of a larger project called Bread Matters, which you can check out, and it basically brings people together from right across Scotland with the purpose of providing nutritious, locally grown grain and ultimately bread, nutritious, locally sourced, home produced bread. So they are a cooperative. They're a community-owned enterprise and cooperative that collaborates with farmers, millers, bakers to basically produce grains suited to growing in the Scottish environment. And through the production of those grains, they then produce nutritious bread aimed at their sort of macro aim and ambition is to improve public health and food security through grains and bread production. So yeah, they set up a community benefit. They set up a cooperative society in 2016 and launched their community share offer, raising over, they just needed a relatively small amount, but they raised just over £36,000. And this funding enabled them to expand certain elements of their business. So specifically their milling capacity, and strengthen, do some work on their supply chain, on their local grain supply chain as well. Interesting with this one, to tie it back into something I mentioned earlier, because they raised that money, they were then more successful for match funding. So Just Growth and a funding program matched gave them a further £20,000, and Esme Fairbairn Foundation gave them £20,000 as well. They were also successful in getting a loan from Cooperative and Community Finance. So that's just an example of that blended package there, all triggered by their own initiative, getting that community shares offer on the table, demonstrating that there's an interest in this, people will invest, there's a need for the product, and then this plethora of other funders and support came to the table. Again, just to demonstrate that they're not wholly grant dependent, their financial sustainability and stability comes from research and education. So they run various different workshops, training sessions. They share their own knowledge and expertise on soil health and sustainable farming with people in exchange for money. So yeah, just a really important part of their business model is that they're not just there, baking bread and using the money that they've raised through shares and various different funders. They are out there bringing money in through, the exchange of their experiences and knowledge with interested parties. Interestingly, in terms of their ongoing local and sustainable impact, they now train in excess of 100 people each year in a sort of community orientated artisan bread making training scheme. They grow 500 tons of improved nutrient dense bread on organic Scottish farms, which enables more than 13,000 to have a year-round supply of bread made. So bread made enough to feed 13,000 a year. So it's grown significantly since they started in 2012. I'll whistle through some of the key learnings, some of the key points from these people's journeys, because it's very, very easy when you've only got an hour to showcase the sunshine and the success. But it is a difficult journey. Anything that involves engaging with a community and taking that community on a consensus-based journey takes time and has difficulties. It's a tricky governance and legal landscape out there as well. People often get lost down rabbit holes and pulled into setting up legal structures that don't suit community shares, which can waste time is probably a little bit harsh, but you can lose valuable time by, potentially setting up a kick and then realizing you can't raise shares using it, those sorts of things. So there's quite a lot of learning here from other people that I think is worth sharing. So strong community engagement essential. I think that's come through today's presentation quite clearly. Projects thrive when the community is behind them, when the community feels involved and invested. So building that awareness, hosting events, engaging with your community meaningfully, gathering local input early increases the likelihood of success. Going about this yourself and then hoping to raise shares from a community that knows nothing about it isn't going to work. Clear governance structures really, really matter. So getting that advice early and structuring both your legal structure and how your governance structure interacts with that legal structure upfront is vital. A well-structured cooperative or community benefit society is the simplest way to getting things off on the right foot. It also fosters trust from the start, making sure people have clear roles, making sure people understand what democratic decision making is, making sure people understand what transparent processes are about if they're not used to that, all ensures long-term resilience. Effective communication campaigns drives investment. So a compelling story about why the community business or the offer matters, what it's going to help, will attract investors. Providing regular updates, testimonials, social media updates and campaigns boost confidence and the likelihood that people engage with what it is you're doing. And lastly, financial planning is absolutely crucial. So these, sustainable models, we know they ensure long-term viability. So having this realistic business plan, just because you're doing this, just because you're a community business, just because you're raising community shares, doesn't mean that you are exempt from business planning and financial planning. So making sure you've got a clear revenue stream, you understand how you're going to bring money in, you understand if you've got a blended finance approach with some loans that need payback, you understand how you're going to pay that back. Good risk management all makes for stronger financial success, I think, and planning for that, I think we all know, is crucial to do that and get the right advice for that up front. Very quickly, lastly, I just want to mention, again, it's come through the presentation, but focus on legacy, focus on the future, long term, not quick returns. So unlike traditional investments, community shares are about the long term. They're about legacy for generations to come. They're about social value. They're not about lining people's pockets with good interest rates. And I think, projects that plan for the long term tend to be the most successful. So I'm going to stop there. 6 minutes to go. I've not done bad. One of my main worries today was an hour. Oh my goodness, how am I going to cram it all in? So hopefully there's been a bit of something for everybody in that whistle stop tour, something of interest, something that's resonated with you. Obviously, I'd like to open up for questions and maybe a little bit of discussion around, maybe some of the insights gained from the session, maybe a bit of reflection on where the opportunities are in Dumfries and Galloway. So I always hope that there are questions and I don't have to pick on people. But I'll stop there. Probably heard enough of my voice. Oh, Carol, were you speaking there? Sorry, you're on mute.
No, I was just going to say there's a couple of questions in the chat, but they're from Dennis actually. So maybe we just ask Dennis to unmute and he can ask the questions. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Aye, that's fine. Yeah. The main one was about these withdrawable shares. Got somebody waking up here. How does that work in terms of withdrawable shares? So say you've raised 100 grand to build a harbour or save a harbour, you spend all that money and somebody wants to withdraw their 10 grand.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, there's been many problems with that.
And I think to do that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of examples of where. So I think that's why on the slide I included where this is financially possible or viable for the society, because in many circumstances, particularly if somebody wants to withdraw quite quickly after the share offer, the money's been raised, it's been spent on, purchasing the pub, repairing the harbour, getting things to the stage. There's very, very rarely money left until the business is in a situation where it can start earning again under the new management, let's say. So again, just to reinforce this patient thing, and in your communication campaign, it needs to be a key part of don't expect to be able to withdraw quickly. I think is key because it's often spent.
Is the expectation though? But is the expectation that at some point everybody or most people or whoever who has invested would be able to withdraw later on?
No, I would say in my experience with community shares, it's very few people invest with the expectation to withdraw. They invest. This is a campaign of hearts and minds, Dennis, not investment to pull out and go and spend on other things, or pull out and come out with more than you invested with. This is about, you really believe in the campaign, you really believe in what they're trying to do, you have the surplus cash to be able to give a few £100 or a few £1,000 to helping them to do so. And I would say in large, investors do not expect to be able to withdraw that. That's not to
Right.
say, as I started my original answer, that I've not seen people want to withdraw and
Yeah.
not be able to, because as you say, a large amount of the capital gets spent very quickly to purchase or save the asset or get the thing up and running. It's not hanging around in banks just waiting to hand it back. It's used quickly, it's needed. But yeah, in large, over 90% of investors don't expect to get this money back. They do it because they
Okay.
really, in their heart of hearts, want to see this thing happen.
So
and
the
that is the
withdrawable
truth.
thing is kind of more of a theory thing than a practice thing.
I would say that's how it's panned out. That is how it's
Yeah.
panned out. But I think, you have to give people the opportunity to be able to withdraw money that they've invested. That is just part of the community benefit and cooperative society rules.
I've got another question, but I can see someone else is unmuted there, so I might
It's
let
just
them
me,
speak
sorry,
first.
I can't find the button to raise my hand, so I'm just going to ask the question, but it is about that. But is the assumption that if you want to raise £100,000 and let's say you had 100 investors or however many you had, the organisation should work on the assumption that potentially everybody could ask for that money back. I'm guessing that when you start, you say you can buy a share from £25 to £10,000, the share investments for X amount of years, and you could get it back and we'll pay you a little bit of interest. And why I asked the question is, especially if an organisation failed, so let's say the harbour had failed or something controversial, and I'm just thinking there are some quite big projects in Dumfries and Galloway that had failed spectacularly, not necessarily through share schemes, but I could imagine an investor going, I want my money back, but en masse. So I'm assuming that an organisation needs to start this with a view that they'll have an income stream and the potential to pay everybody back or a significant percentage of people back. Even though it doesn't often happen, I think that's probably how it...
Yeah, every business needs a contingency.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In large, that'll come down to whether or not people are opting into the voluntary asset lock or not, because there always will be an asset there. Different,
Right.
there's a variety of rules. So Democratic Finance alone have 2 or 3 sets of community shares rules, and it's project by project. But you're right in terms of the timeline. It will be built into the campaign. It will be built
Yeah.
into the legal document between share seller and share purchaser. Don't expect to see a return on your investment for at least 5 years, for example, until this business is up and running, generating income. They may well be able to set a nice interest. You'll get interest back on your investment. Some people don't, some people do. It's on a case by case basis, absolutely. But yeah, there have been examples where it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, and people are left wanting their money. If there isn't an asset lock, you're in a lucky enough position where you can sell the asset and pay people back. If there is an asset lock, trickier times, trickier paths to navigate, but case by case.
Okay, and before I go back to Dennis, quickly, can you say at the beginning you can't have your money back for 5 years? Can you actually stipulate a time when people couldn't come back and cash in? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Go on, Dennis.
I've just got a follow-on question there. So you've sort of all of these examples you've given, and in your answers there, you're talking about businesses. Is this a funding model purely for businesses? I mean, one of the examples that was given was a village hall, which, an asset like that, which probably wouldn't really be run as a commercial business anyway. You might need to generate some income to keep it running. But say you invested in whatever, 100 grand to buy the village hall or the village pub, or to really renovate it massively. You're never expecting that to be you're never expecting it to be a commercial business that would generate enough income at all to make back anything like that amount of money.
Yeah.
So you're kind of treating this. I mean, if it can be used like that, you're sort of treating it as a investment, I suppose. A financial investment into a physical thing that you're then not going to remove. I don't know. Does it need to be a business? I suppose is my question there.
So when you say business, you mean something that has the ability to have an independent income stream rather than be
commercial income stream.
No, it can. I think I stress the commercial and independent income stream because I've worked in an environment where it's just heavily recommended that you consider those things simply for the viability and sustainability of whatever it is you want to bring to fruition. It's always recommended, unless you have absolute charitable status and you have a wealth and a plethora of charitable options to keep your incentive going. We always recommend that you think about other income routes. But to answer your question, no, it doesn't have to be a project that has commercial income. No, people will invest in shares in something that is of interest to them, that speaks to them, whether that brings in commercial income or not.
That's good. Yeah, that makes sense.
Any last questions? I know it's 3 minutes past. People probably want to get off and get some lunch. Any other questions from anybody? As I say, I will follow up with the link to book in for one of those one-to-ones. So everybody's got that, because they have to be done relatively quickly. We've got to do this before year end, so they need to go in for week commencing the 24th of March. And I'd love to be able to speak to some of you who have potential projects on the go. So I think we'll leave it at that. Lovely, lots of nodding. Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time.
That was great. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.